All right, everybody, it's 1 o'clock. We are getting back into our panels. We do have a workshop happening right now on mobile streaming and internet connectivity if you're interested in that for the workshop. And right now we're going to be talking about live stream marketing and monetization. I'll take it over to Chris.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name's Chris NETO. I'm with Snare Marketing. I'm one of the sponsors of the show. And I get a panel that knows what they're talking about, and I don't.
Good luck with that.
No lie. So how do you monetize live streaming? I guess the first question I have for the group is for the people that are creating content right now in this audience and that are working with different platforms of how to do, they got their audience. They have the platform. Anybody who's sitting here who's a content creator wants to create without selling out, per se. How does somebody create content, stay true to who they are, and still find a way to monetize that? Who wants to be the first to reveal the golden egg?
I'll start with that. You got to kill that aspect of yourself and embrace 2019 as it is. The idea of when some of us were younger, there were great bands that didn't sell out. And then I very much felt that growing up. And then I had children, and a whole sea change came along where now the goal is to sell out. And it's not selling out. We're all literally here about monetizing. That's selling. You are selling whatever it is that you have built, worked so hard to connect with people. You have an audience. And now, like you say, you're trying to monetize it. Don't embrace an inner critic that says you're selling out. You've got to sell it. You're here to monetize it. So my number one overarching kind of response to that is that you just don't criticize yourself like that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I do think one of the things that is important while selling is critical, maintaining your veracity, maintaining that sense of integrity, even though you're selling, and you can do both. Don't plug products you don't believe in. Don't get involved with causes you don't feel comfortable with. So I think there's a level of this which requires you to walk a line. At one point, you're trying to make a living out of it, but at another, what gives you credibility is that people can trust you. So you can never go so far where you cross that trust line. And I think we're probably all in agreement on that. That
makes sense. But like the premise was you've built an audience and now you're trying to sell or monetize. Yep. If you've built an audience, they trust you. You don't want to break that trust. Yep. There's no doubt about it. But again, you've built an audience because you've been consistent and people are clearly attached to or connected to whatever it is you're doing. So again, I just think I run into a lot of people who have the idea, I don't want to sell out. No, you're not selling out, you're selling. That's a good thing.
Awesome. So I guess we should have started by asking the main question is, what is monetization today, right? Is monetization simply selling a t-shirt? Is it collecting a paycheck? Is it getting free swag? What is monetization to you guys? Because this is where you guys live and breathe on a daily basis. Explain to the audience, explain to me. Give me a reason to monetize.
Sure, so I'm happy to start. My name's Jake. I work for YouNow. It's a live streaming social media platform based right here in New York. And our platform was one of the first to actually have user-generated revenue as a means of monetization. And so I come from a little bit of a different angle from the other folks up here. But what we've been trying to do for the past several years is kind of evolve that business model so that you are not dependent on advertisers, so that you are not necessarily dependent, although I don't think these things are mutually exclusive, on what we're calling sell yourself out. I think that there is a way to do that in a genuine and organic way. But we are adding a pretty major feature in YouNow where you can gain a financial stake in the platform itself. And it's the first time that consumers are able to be compensated in proportion to the value they're adding to a platform like YouNow or any other number of platforms that can integrate our technology. whether it's a Facebook or a Snapchat or an Uber or whatever it is, any network where you're contributing value to that platform, we believe that you should own a piece of that platform in a sense. And so we think about it in a user-focused way, whether it's a content creator, an audience member, or something else. And historically, first you weren't able to make any money online. Then you could make cash online through advertising. Then you could make cash online through users. Now we're saying you can do those things, but you can also actually earn a piece of the platform that you're helping to grow, and then benefit as it grows, because that piece can appreciate in value.
Like an equity stake, kind of?
Similar to that, yes. So it's a very new idea. I think it is very different from a lot of, for sure, the hardware folks that are in here and what they're thinking about day to day. But it's our approach to this monetization question. It's been working very nicely.
But it speaks to the question at hand as far as the connection with an audience. It's funny because we drive for my Packers website. I run a Packers site that covers the team, and we monetize via YouTube, Patreon, etc. Stuff I'm sure everyone in this room is familiar with. But we're kind of driving towards what you're talking about as far as having your audience, the more they're invested, we're talking about connection, the more they're invested, the more they want to help you drive your content, the harder they're going to work for you. They're going to be evangelical for you. Getting them eventually, and it can be a long play. It's not a make a quick buck scheme or anything, but, we started just two guys in a room with a podcast, as many people do, and it took a long time to build an audience, build a connection, and it takes years to build that trust, but they feel like they have equity, and eventually they start saying, hey, this means a lot to me. This is worth my money. And now we have subscribers, we have people who buy merch, buy swag, etc. But to me, it's about that building that connection over, trumps pretty much anything else we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like building, it's turning social capital into financial capital.
Exactly.
Almost, right? And I think that, look, in live streaming, the most successful live streamers out there build a genuine connection with their audience. It's the only way that it works. You build a community, you grow that community, and you build relationships. The nice part about this new world that we're building, this new business model, is that we can reward audience members with a financial stake in the platform, just like we can reward creators. And we can reward far more people than are typically rewarded through a YouTube or any other platform that's out there, where you reward 1% or 2% of the creators among the billions of videos that exist. Now we can reward a far greater percentage because we are distributing value in a much more democratized way. And it's exciting, and it's had great impact on YouNow for sure, which I'm happy to share, but I also don't want to monopolize this panel.
Contact this man.
Yes, please let me know if you're interested.
It was interesting because when I was talking to Paul about moderating this panel, one of the things that keeps coming up is that, everybody has an idea. Everybody wants to sit home. Everybody wants to sit home and create something. They're good at something. That's why you created or started your content. So at what point do you start that monetization product? Do you set out when you're sitting home, like Luna here, who started crafting? Do you set home and say, eventually in a 2-year plan, I'm going to start making bank? Or do you just do it like you did, which was just, hey, two guys sitting around doing a podcast? At what point do you realize that it's time to make a living off of that? And I'm talking from your experience. Go ahead, Rudy.
Yeah, I'd like to join in. So good afternoon. My name is Rudy ELLIS. I'm the CEO of Switchboard Live. We developed a platform for live content publishers and brands to be able to push their content onto all their social destinations. So at the end of the day, they can get more impressions, right? And so one thing I wanted to add was, people that use our product, that's what they're looking to do. It's how can I do something that I'm passionate about, right, and get as many eyeballs on that. And just kind of what you mentioned with Luna starting off with, crafting, typically people, when they're creating any type of content they're passionate about, that's where it should start. It should be authentic because it should be something that you have a passion about, and being able to use these technologies to get more people, one, to be aware, and then two, they're going to naturally want to be a part of that, learn more, give comments. And the more that you're able to do that, and the more that you're able to provide an authentic message that's core to what it is you're creating, I think that's the monetization part and getting discoverability and getting impressions, that will just happen, naturally.
And I'm going to have to plug your product here because you go from one to many. You
Correct.
hit up.
Yeah.
So for people that are not familiar with what Rudy does, his product actually goes out from, say, a website, and it will hit your Facebook, your Twitter, your LinkedIn, all at one time. So it's saving you time and money.
Yeah,
by doing that sort of stuff and building your audience.
Your goal is from an individual crafter to a gamer to a podcaster, blogger to sports teams to television stations. You're creating quality content across that full spectrum, and what's the point of doing something live if no one's going to watch it, right? So why not get it out there so you can get as many eyeballs on it? And if you're concerned with the type of content, your monetization model could be just pure impressions, right? How can we, validate the content we're building by making sure we're getting, impressions as well?
Now, and just real quick off of that, there may be corporate users here or end users that are trying to build it within their own company. What is the value of impressions? What's an ROI, for example, for a company that's doing live streaming, if you're doing it in-house, right?
Yeah, I would say just, corporate communication, right? Making sure that the values, the quarterly goals, that's being articulated to your internal, constituents. So I think that can be something, however you want to manage that impression, element. So internal communication is definitely something key as well.
I think one of the points that people have raised is that you start out building social capital. So to your original question about when do you look at monetizing, it's really an exchange of social capital for different monetization options. So you can be looking as a product producer and use your streaming activities to gain credibility and help sell products, sort of off-channel from the actual content you're creating. Whereas others could do it where I actually want to get sponsors, or I want to reach a certain audience that I can then sell some other value to. So I think it's understanding when you start out that you have to build the social capital, and it's when you have enough of that you can start to exchange it for something that's monetizable. But it isn't something that you necessarily go and say, okay, I'm expecting sponsors, in my first 10 shows, and it's great, so why don't people pay attention? You have to build that capital up.
That doesn't happen for everybody?
Not too often.
Awesome. So you're taking social capital, and then what Jake does is you're turning it into financial capital. And based on your content and based on the audience that you're building, you're now basically ensuring, or you're creating your business plan as you move along. Is that the way you guys did it with the Packers podcast?
I mean, yes and no. It's a lot of trial and error, and I know you're talking about when's the time, right, to monetize. We're going to monetize this, and there is definitely a point where it became a job, a gig, rather than this is something we did for fun. I mean, and it's going to be a very individualistic kind of experience for any content creator, dependent on what the niche is, what the audience is like. And look, I don't pretend I'm sitting up here saying a whole lot that everyone in this room doesn't already know and or has experienced. Just know that what I hope I can do is reinforce your best ideas and get you to dismiss some of the ideas that maybe you're thinking, this might not be this. Oh, that's right. Okay, he's right. This is a bad idea. Because, look, when the audience comes to you and we've talked about creating the relationship with consistency, with quality content over a long period of time, they trust you, and that trust is what is going to end up having them part with their hard-earned dollar and giving it to you, whether it is subscription, swag, whatever, and that takes time. This idea that you're going to, do a couple shows and, okay, sponsors are going to be beating down the door. We've been doing this for over 10 years, and we've just started getting to the point where this is my full-time gig. So it's a long play, and that's not everything, but just know that if you eat, sleep, and breathe it, and you work really hard, it could still take a very long time.
Okay. All right, so the next topic that we need to talk about is help me work this out. Content marketing versus brand recognition, right? What do you guys, where is that line, right? Where's the content that you're doing now coming back to your brand, right? Are you curating that ahead of time? Like, these are for content creators that are sitting in the audience right now. Are you thinking of the content weeks in advance? Are you always on brand, or do you veer off? And how does that affect, then, will that affect your monetization? Because you just kind of drifted a little bit.
That's like the third rail, right?
Yeah.
I don't, again, it's your authentic voice, et cetera, whatever you want to call it. We did come to a point very early on, specifically where we said, if we are going to monetize, or if we are going to do merch, or we are going to try and ask for someone's money, we want to do it in a way that is reflective of the brand. We don't want to. So we've had people approach us trying to advertise on our site or become a sponsor for our podcast, but it doesn't fit. You know what I mean? Like, it's a Green Bay Packers site, so we actively search for beer sponsors, cheese sponsors, anything having to do with Wisconsin. Like, that's our target, that's our audience. But if a New York firm comes along and says, we want to put ads on your site for a trip to the Hamptons, it's like, that makes no sense. And that, when people, our fans that we have spent all this time building a relationship with, come to our Patreon and all of a sudden they get an ad for, go to Cape Cod, they're thinking, what the heck happened? This is, again, trial and error, and this is where you kind of learn what your audience is, who they are, how they connect to you, and how that connection is so important. Like I said, we had to come to a realization of, okay, this is our core, and we're not going to deviate from it. Now that's, again, it's very specific to what we do. It's not going to be the case for everybody.
Jake, does your product now blur those lines? Because it doesn't matter who they are or what they do. If they're a sports company and your podcast is a cheese-related podcast?
I don't know about
backwards.
blurring the lines. I think that we provide a platform with any number of ways to create content, whether it's a talking head or a gamer using OBS or a comedian or an artist or whatever it is. I agree that authenticity, whether it's I started here focusing on music and I've ended up here doing stand-up comedy, as long as that's truly you, and as long as you are not trying to be something that you're not, that can work. And the platform that is YouNow is perfect for any of those use cases. But I agree that where we've seen people struggle sometimes is when they are coming from a more choreographed background where you can edit and where you can take months to make something perfect, and then they try live streaming and they have to react, right? And they have to create content for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And you're talking to a screen, and we have great guesting features. You can have 4 people live at the same time on YouNow, and you can be responding to chats in real time, and you can be using OBS, but it's live. And you have to be there, and you have to be present, and you have to listen, and you have to hear your audience, and you have to react to that. And there's some people who are amazing at doing that. And there's some people who just aren't amazing at doing that, and that's totally fine. But live streaming is a unique beast, and I think that everybody here knows that. What I focus on most is figuring out how to monetize and figuring out how to reward the people who are really good at that, and figuring out how to encourage the people who aren't so good at that. But I think that's where I'd say, don't try to be something you're not. Like, if you're not into live streaming, if you can't do live streaming, cool, no big deal. If you want to kind of change the things that you're into because you're interested in different things, great, go for that. But be yourself and don't try to, be a musician because you saw somebody else do that and they made good money. That doesn't make sense, won't necessarily work for you. So I think that's kind of where I'd say there's a gray area there, but it's probably where we come out.
Yeah, you're not even recommending for them to even try to massage it. You're just trying to figure out, do what you do, the content that you create. That's being authentic, and if that is being authentic, your audience will see that.
Yeah, no, mind you, planning a live stream is good.
Yes.
And by far the best content creators we have, the most successful content creators we have.
At least bullet pointed out.
Right.
Man. Come on.
They have a schedule, they have a theme, they have a sense of what they want to do over the course of their 30 minutes or an hour or 3 hours, whatever it is. It's absolutely best practice, and we encourage them to do that. Yeah. But it needs to be genuine, and you need to be there to live stream, not to just do your thing and not react to the audience.
One thing I wanted, it was kind of piggybacking off what you were talking about as far as reaching everybody and the importance of that. You talk about monetization. I've run into people who get hung up on the idea of, if I am everywhere, I've got to monetize everywhere, which isn't the case, at least in my experience. And that's not just our Packers site, but LiveX, the production company I work with, they, handle huge events, they handle small events, but the idea that we came to a couple years ago, or about a year and a half ago, where we were so ardently on Facebook, right? Facebook Live was the place to be, and then of course Facebook changed everything, and newspapers went to hell because they had put everything in it, and et cetera. But that was kind of the eureka moment, right? Where it was, wait a second, there are all these disparate audiences. There's the fragmentation of the media landscape is very real, and everyone in here knows that. Like you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not everywhere. But the monetization can be centered on one platform, one spot, one relationship, where our relationship with people on Facebook is very, very different than our relationship with people on YouTube. And that doesn't mean that one doesn't get the attention. They all get attention. But the people on YouTube, and that's our main driver, that's where we make the most money. And I think that it's an important distinction because, again, I think in this modern media landscape, you know there are people everywhere. There's Twitch, there's Snapchat, there's Instagram. You're live everywhere. You're talking about doing a live stream. You can literally stop you get off your 3-hour live stream in a studio, and then you can literally get on, say, Insta Live as you're walking to back to your apartment. Hey guys, just got done with my 3-hour live stream. I'm going to be live for another 20 minutes as I go home. But that's the relationship.
Content.
And you're not monetizing that. But it's the relationship that people are like, oh, they just got done in the studio. I'm going to follow them on Insta now. Because they're all in. But the monetization relationship is, special.
Well, one thing I'd like to add, I think just like your scenario, after I do a 3-hour live stream on Instagram, is, what is the call to action, right? Like, where do you want to direct them? So, yes, you're absolutely right. There are definitely effective ways to go live on all the platforms, and sometimes it probably doesn't make sense, but as long as the messaging is to say, hey, we're doing this 3-hour stream, but here's 30 minutes of it, so you can get a sneak peek, a live look-in, and at the end of that, go to this paywall, download this app, subscribe to this channel. That's a way where you can use the platforms for discoverability and then drive people to where you want them to go, right? And that can be part of your monetization scheme. And we've seen different types of publishers do just that, right? They incorporate even influencers that have an affinity to the type of content they're producing. Hey, you know what? So-and-so is going live to our channel. Come watch 10 minutes on my channel, and then we can talk about it. And then if you want to see more, go here, right? And that's a great way to really, leverage the audience that they have to create, a bigger audience for you, and you're getting a much more targeted viewer at the end of the day.
The best idea for a show that I ever saw was there was a guy who didn't have a podcast or didn't have a show, but was just breaking down the other shows into a
reactions,
15-minute, let's just recap what other people are saying, and they were successful at doing that. So the sky's the limit when it comes to ideas and what you want to do to really push that. And you were going to say something, Jake?
Well, I was just going to echo what Rudy was saying. I mean, we see that all the time with YouNow, and part of it is that, because YouNow is user-generated revenue and because it's a different way to monetize, we see people all the time going on an Instagram Live, and a lot of these content creators are very good. I mean, they'll tell a story, they'll spread some gossip, and they'll say, and to find out what happened next, join me on YouNow. Mm-hmm. And then you get, 1,000, 2,000 people flooding into a YouNow broadcast where they can monetize and where they can benefit and where they can gamify it, and they can interact a little bit more than they could on other platforms. And so I agree. I mean, there are some platforms that some people are just genuinely better on and more comfortable on, but in order to build a brand, it does take a very holistic approach. And it's not either or, it's really and.
And one last thing is kind of like what you were mentioning, Aaron, is putting all your eggs in one basket, right? So just like how Facebook, they changed and that had an effect on the content you're producing, why put all your eggs in that one basket, right? Spread those eggs. Maybe they'll turn into, chicken somewhere else,
Well, one of the things that I've witnessed from people is, for example, Instagram Live will cut you off after a certain amount of time. They know that, and they hop. Now you're gonna follow me on Twitter. Now you're gonna follow me. Now we're gonna do our show. So they go to have dinner, and it's an hour of them eating dinner, talking here and there. It ends. To follow him on Twitter because he's gonna do another. He's still gonna be eating for another hour, and people are sitting there watching and asking what they're eating. And then when his show or their show comes on, you've had 2 hours of bonus content, and all you're watching is the guy eating a burger, at the same diner seat every Friday, just saying hi to everybody. That's all it is. So let's talk about what platforms. You guys are across all different platforms. Obviously, with Switchboard Live, you can do all at one time. For the people that are sitting here who are content creators or are thinking about it, is there any one platform that you guys are focused on now that it's going to change? And they're constantly changing, and the algorithms are constantly changing. What is your advice for people that are looking to do that, right? If you're monetizing right now, where should you start? Is there a particular platform that's better than others? Is it the Facebook Lives? Is it the YouTubes?
Yes, I wholeheartedly concur. Just use this man's product, people. For us, it's been two-pronged. I think anybody who says you should only concentrate on one or I don't love that idea. You want multiple revenue streams. Obviously that's the goal, the dream, what have you. For us, it's very much YouTube and Patreon are the main drivers. But you can, and the thing we like to do, you talked about gamification. I think that's a great kind of way to look at it. As far as we try to use YouTube as a way to let the audience drive the content. Like we have live shows where we have the ability to put up, say, their avatar, if whatever it is, their YouTube avatar comes on the screen whenever they give us a donation, and they get their comment / question, whatever. And obviously that's the instant feedback. They see it, it's visual. That only drives people to kind of chime in and kind of one-up each other. And it's crazy because it sounds so simple, and I was really kind of, I don't know like how it looks, and I'm an older guy, I grew up with television, this whole interactive thing, in my back. People go nuts. It's crazy. So you start seeing that feedback loop of, I want to get in, they get this, they see their avatars, and they're seeing their questions, and then, okay, guys, we're going to talk about, there's like 4 topics. You drive the conversation. You tell us where to go. Rather than a rundown, the audience is organically driving each show. And for YouTube, they've made it insanely easy with Super Chat. We watched the NFL draft live for 3 hours because we're total nerds, and people watched with us, and we made over $1,500. Just 2 dudes sitting in a room watching the draft. Like, you could have come over to my home for free. Like, but,
Don't give that away.
I know, but no one knows where I live yet. But the ease of it was shocking. And then on the Patreon side, I'm sure most people in here are either familiar with it or if not on it. With Patreon, again, that's the model of you really trust our content, you really value our content in a way that you are and it's weird, you just have to talk about it. Because for the longest time, I felt uncomfortable asking them money, and this is what I was talking about at the beginning. This idea of kill that part of yourself. Like, they want to give you they value your content, they value your relationship.
It makes them a part of it even more.
It makes them a part of it. So it's like, the Patreon thing is incredible to me because the more you talk about it, the more it just grows organically because of the relationship. But it grows because of the relationship, not because you're selling.
But when we talk about content, like a show, there's really a spectrum of things. It's all the things people are talking about where I'm on for 20 minutes here. And so the platform may change. And what's best for long form, if you're doing something which may be more technical or more detailed, Facebook may be good because they have groups and they have a whole community focus
For now.
in it. For now, absolutely. I mean, but you can look at YouTube and say YouTube is great because it's like the second largest search engine. So if you want to do things where people are going to find you, that's great. But you can go for things like YouNow, Get Vocal, other things where I want to get on, I want to grab a few people, and we want to just have a quick people in and out and talk. And I think those are all different forms of your show that, you know, may be my 1 hour show, but the pre-show, the post-show, the all sort of special engagements I do, it's a spectrum of engagement that you need to sort of look at when you look at platform.
So you guys keep going back to TV versus live streaming, two different animals, I guess. So is the sponsored podcast, sponsored live show, is that dead? And are ads running along the lower third? Is that even still in play in 2019?
I mean, I'll always take your money if you're looking to advertise.
Well, your honesty is appreciated.
It's not. Of course, it's not dead. It's very much alive. It's just the idea of if you're just starting out and you're trying to monetize, it's very rare that someone's going to be sending you an email or you're going to get some LinkedIn message saying, "Here's, we have a $5 million campaign and we'd really like to give you a chunk of it." That just doesn't happen. But absolutely. Like I said, with LiveX, we deal with tons of kind of performances / live streams that are attached to major brands, and that's all advertiser driven, that's all sponsorship driven, and that's it's still very much kind of the Wild West. I mean, you look at what we did with the USGA in Pebble Beach. They 4 days out there. Fox owns the broadcast rights, but the streaming rights are just wide open, and we got the contract to go out there and do 4 days. And when we pitched it, when we were bidding for it, people were like, they couldn't wrap their minds around it because they were all coming from TV. But we were like, wait, guys, we will have 3 cameras following Tiger Woods around to but live all the time. And you can cut it up and you can sell it to sponsors and you can do that. So there's that feeling out there where, you talk about, TV versus, there's a whole kind of area that is underutilized, underexploited, if you will, that you can talk to people in TV who haven't thought that way, that, sponsor. Pepsi will definitely sign up for that. A live stream of Tiger Woods, sign me up. But that's something that a lot of people aren't thinking about.
It's interesting because you mentioned before that, you have a very Wisconsin-y podcast because it's Green Bay.
What you talking about?
Green Bay, cheese, those are the things you're looking for. Where does local organizations and companies get involved? I mean, you are now going to the global. Anything that's being done on the internet is global. It's not local anymore. Where does the local small shop, does Ray's Pizza, which is about 1,500 of them here just on this block alone, where do they come and offer you money for that? Do you go there? Do you do that kind of early on in your setting up of your podcast? Your first monetization, is it taking money from Uncle Harry's tool shop?
This is a true story. Our first kind of payment for our podcast was a local brewery in Green Bay, who we record here in New York. Corey and I live here in New York City, but we're both huge Packers fans. They would send us beer for us to drink live on the stream, and that was the payment. And again, that's the relationship. That's we're trying to be an authentic connection with the audience. Again, that was the start. That was the very first thing we ever did as far as, okay, someone's giving us something in exchange for, they're going to have their products going to be on our stream, et cetera. But that's grown, but that's connected to the audience. We're like, the number one question I get, and this is true, the number one question I get every single time I'm online Aaron, what beer are you drinking? And I always joke. I say, if your company wants to like pay me to tell you what beer I'm drinking, please have them contact me. But I never ever say what I'm drinking, because they're dying to know. And then, of course, now we've had beer sponsors approach us and say, well, we'd love to talk to you about you telling these people that you're drinking our beer. So you can start very small. You're going to start small if you're just building an audience. But again, it's the authenticity to me that's the most important.
You want to throw your audience off, put a little gaff tape over a shirt and pretend that you're wearing a shirt that you can't show. The questions that will come in are pretty interesting. So just saying, it may happen, may not. Anyway, so the next question I have is user-generated revenue. It's written on this bullet points, and I'm trying to figure out what it is that we put it there for when we discuss this. But user-generated revenue, obviously, this is not just the Patreons, right? You're talking about gifts. Is there a legal, I guess, as for the guys that are up here, like John, can you accept gifts from a company? Or is there something legal about that you can't do? Illegal, from a business perspective?
I don't think there's anything illegal about it, but I think disclosure is really important.
And that's what I was getting at, the disclosure. I send you a microphone.
Yeah, I mean,
You have to kind of put it out there.
because we do a technology-based show, and we review gear, but we also talk about how to use technology.
Yeah.
So for us, I would never want to take something and simply because it was sent to me, plug it or review it. And if we found something that we liked, we always would disclose that in advance and then say, our opinion is our own. And I think it's just part of building that trust and maintaining that trust with an audience. You can't sort of take money on the side. It just doesn't smell good. If it doesn't pass the smell test, don't do it. I mean, that's
the disclosure agreements have to be made out, and that's probably where I should have maybe I phrased the question incorrectly. But if you are getting product, you have to make that known. You have to be transparent. That's been an issue for a lot of the influencers online, Instagrammers that obviously are hey, we just happen to have this lipstick, and guess what? That lipstick was given to you. You have to make that known. So there has to be some sort of disclaimer, or you have to say that it's some sort of paid promotion and stuff like that. You guys have never run into that on the content creation side.
No, nothing like that. Again, the relationship with the audience is genuine, so I get a lot of people know I like Star Wars, and they send me Star Wars stuff, but I don't think the government's going to come knocking on my door on a Packers podcast talking about Star Wars stuff.
Not for that
so
Luke
I think I'll be all
Skywalker
right.
action figure, no.
I mean, I think it's worth noting though, like, you asked earlier about, is advertising, like the scroll at the bottom of the screen, dead? I don't think it's dead. I think that what we've seen though is like an evolution in what advertising looks like. And I think that a lot of advertisers have figured that out, and they try to find, if we're talking about live streaming space, if we're talking about the influencer space, they're trying to find influencers who speak to their target demographic. And when they try to find those influencers are most successful when they speak in a way that is meaningful to them. And it's not just the lines that the advertiser gave to them. There are a number of, podcasts that I listen to that at this point, when they're advertising, they're like, and now, a word from our sponsors. But if you miss that bit, they're talking about, I don't know, TaskRabbit, or they're talking about MeUndies, or whatever these e-commerce programs spending millions of dollars on advertising are doing. They're talking about it because they genuinely like the product. They're talking about when they wear it. They're talking about when something their audience can relate to happens. And by the time you get 30 seconds into the advertisement, it sounds like it's just a part of the podcast. And it's because they connect to that product. And so I think that advertising is by no means dead. I think that it's evolving. I agree that it's the Wild West, and a lot of people are just figuring out what this is going to look like. But what you're doing with beer is perfect, right? It's what Peter King did with beer, coffee all the time back in the day. And it's something that you genuinely care about, and that creates an opportunity for advertisers.
You have no idea how much I care about beer. That's true.
It's something that advertisers want to see, want to connect with, and can genuinely invest in. And that makes a big difference for the return they get on the advertisement. So I do think it's a matter of the right connection between the right influencer and the right brand. But I think there's a huge opportunity there for people who understand that new world order and how people react. I mean, there's stats out there like consumers trust corporations less than they trust the opposition party in the government, right? I mean, they want to hear the message from somebody they trust, and that person is often a content creator they listen to all the time. So there's a real opportunity there. I think we're just scratching the surface of it, but I don't think it's disingenuous in any way to accept money for these things. I think it's a great way to build a brand and build a career.
So this is the part where we all put on our Zoltan hat and stuff like that. And if you don't know who that is, go to Coney Island. What is trending right now that you guys are keeping an eye on in the monetization of content or in the monetization of social? Like, what to you has got your interest right now that may be something you're looking into?
I'll start. I'd say for us at Switchboard, we've done a lot of events with partners, and we also have customers that are using our platform. And one of the things that I don't think that's been identified is an easier way for the publishers and brands to be able to get the type of audience they're looking for, meaning more of a targeted audience, right? And so we're constantly thinking of like how can we bring the audiences, right? So you have these influencers that have, they may not even be going live, right? They may just every Thursday at 6 o'clock upload a video, and people are tuning in to watch that content, right? So how can a brand that's producing content that would love to get in front of that audience, but aren't aware of that channel or don't know that channel has this 100,000 subscriber base that people are engaged for 48 minutes of the 50-minute video that they're making, right? And so that's something for us that we're definitely looking to figure out how we can make that gap a lot shorter.
Yeah, I mean I think it is a huge gap that you're trying to solve for. We're talking about trending in the monetization space, and I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record, but there's just never been an opportunity, and it's because of the lack of technology that we're now leaning into and taking advantage of, to earn a stake in a platform that you're contributing to. It hasn't existed for a good reason. And so now, and we haven't talked about this specifically, but we have leaned into and integrated blockchain technology into YouNow, which has allowed us to compensate content creators and their audiences in proportion to the contributions and the value that they're adding to the platform. And that allows them to grow with the platform. And it for sure engenders loyalty, and it creates a new dynamic between a company and a user base, so that it's not people looking for the next dollar. It's people who are growing with the company, and they're fully invested in the company, and they benefit when we grow. Snapchat IPO'd for $25 billion. How many Snapchat creators saw any of that? That's what we're solving for. And it's super exciting, and it's a problem that everybody knows exists in the space. Casey Neistat and Phil DeFranco are investors in this. They've seen the space evolve for the past 20 years, and they haven't seen an opportunity to do what we're doing. So I think it is we're at the very beginning of the trend. I think we're very early, but it is the beginning of a reality that I think a lot of people are going to benefit from, and we're certainly excited about it.
Awesome.
I'll just echo everything he said. No, I mean, it's funny because you talk that feels like the way forward, right? Where there's an investment, a stake in a platform for a user. For me, I mean, wiser heads than mine are looking forward down the road, know what's coming. To me, the number one thing I keep running into, and I feel like I'm kind of dragging people along, is the scope of the internet. Like, it's so funny how brands, if you're talking to a client, you're pitching business, etc., they're so hyper-focused on what they have right now, or whatever the audience is at the moment. You go through pitch decks, and it's all, we're reaching this many people, this much engagement, people are watching this many minutes of our video, okay, great. But look, that's still a fragment of where you could go. And this idea that new platforms are coming along and new ways of monetizing, the whole world is open to you. Maybe not in certain countries where the internet is completely shut down, but for the most part, the world is watching. The world, anyone in this world could be watching your content, and that person is just waiting to give you their money. Like, that sounds crass, but it's true. Like, your relationship now is not with people around a fire, it's not with people in the town square, it is literally with the world. And it's something I try and hammer home to our people every single day. You are broadcasting every time you go live on the internet to the world. That's important.
Yeah, I think part of what people are talking about here is finding intermediaries that can marry you, that can see the value in what you do and marry you with different types of revenue opportunities that you alone couldn't reach. So it's not really an advertising thing, but more almost like finding investors, finding people who want to become stakeholders. And that can take place either in an ownership sense, or it can take place in a transactional sense. I want to reach out. They say, this content is great. I can package it for my audience. So I think there is opportunity for this type of brokering of sponsorship, brokering of monetization between people who have audiences they're looking to reach that are, abstract from you, where they can turn around and say, I can bundle you and you and you and make a new monetizable asset out of that. Mm-hmm. So very much like happens at financial instruments, but now around content instruments.
Awesome. And I guess the last question I want to put together before we run out of time, and then we can ask if there's any questions in the audience. Obviously, this is a live streaming conversation. That's obviously the hot topic. Do you gentlemen still think that the other side, building the email lists, the newsletters, the blogs, is that still relevant in the I guess the holistic approach of your content?
Yeah, 1 billion%. Absolutely, no question about it. Look, it's like I was talking about before, and kind of what he's all about over there is reaching as many eyeballs as you can, and you want to be where your audience is, and that is everywhere. Again, it's the worldwide thing. There are plenty of people still on email. There are plenty of people still reading blogs. Now, is it trendy? Is it the thing that gets talked about? Is it the thing that people are podcasting about? Maybe not, but there's still plenty of people there. And that's the trick, is juggling all those, keeping all those in the air, and still having the wherewithal to monetize any number of those streams and give yourself revenue streams in a number of different areas. Look, you got to be in every one of those things you just mentioned, or you're wasting opportunities. They are all opportunities, every single one.
Totally agree. It's funny, you mentioned the story about the guy, 2 hours of content, him watching him eat food, right? We posted a blog post about that. Didn't even know what that was, like mukbang, right? That's the title, or that genre of content. And for us, we see that folks are searching for how to do this, how to do that, and it's been a great opportunity for us to get that type of inbound, because we're discovering all the different types of subject matters out there, or verticals, and we're writing content about that, and that's one of the things that we use heavily. We do have a newsletter, and you have to, right? You have to put content out there, because people are searching for that, no matter not just in your hometown, but worldwide as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, I guess now we can ask the audience if there's any questions, pick their brains. I don't know where the catch box went. If anybody has a question, I'll jump out and hand you my microphone. Raise your hand. All right. Catch box is right here. There you go.
Okay, awesome. So I was just kind of curious, and regarding the platform that's being monetized and those who are producing content and adding subscribers to the platform are sharing in the profit. So I think it sounds like a lot of people are getting offers to monetize their feed with their subscriber base directly from companies that want to advertise or reach that subscriber base. But are you negotiating those relationships with the advertisers? Are you the one reaching out and bringing the revenue in? I guess in a sense they're getting invested in a platform, but who's paying their way? Who's paying for the platform ultimately?
Yeah, so and I'll just speak for YouNow. We do not have relationships directly with advertisers. Our monetization model is primarily user-generated revenue, and so there will be audience members who are supporters of content creators. They will subscribe to their channels. They will buy virtual gifts. They will send those gifts to content creators. They will benefit from doing so by gaining status on the platform, by helping the people they support trend, so on and so forth. And they get any number of benefits on the platform by doing so. But that is the primary revenue model, both for the content creators and the business right now. And there's an additional layer of earning a financial stake in the platform. But the advertising bit, on YouNow at least, that is going to be negotiated between the advertisers and the individual content creators. And there are a number of third-party platforms that help kind of aggregate advertising demand and figure out where those advertising dollars should go, which content creators are best for them. We were talking about cohorting earlier. They do a lot of that work. But on our side, we do not engage directly with advertisers for the most part. It's not a core part of our business model.
So, I mean, it sounds like you basically combine an e-commerce platform with a video hosting platform, and so it's the audience that's funding the whole
Yeah, that's right.
equation. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Any other questions out there? Well, gentlemen, looks like we're good. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.